Hi, my name is Anastasia, and I'm a history teacher at the Beekman School. When you're studying history, it's not the best way to just try to memorize all the information. It'll only stay in your head temporarily, and it won't serve you any kind of purpose. So you need to look for ways of making the information your own. And you might find it interesting that some of your interests outside of school can actually help you in your studies inside of school. For instance, if you're a big action movie fan, that can actually be helpful to you in history class. Bear with me, I know this is going to sound a little silly, but Sylvester Stallone has actually helped you. He has created 2 franchises where if you study the villains that he's chosen that he will rise up against and defeat, you're actually going to get an inside look of the political atmosphere and the foreign relations that the United States was going through at the time that those movies were made. So let's look at some examples. If we take his first successful franchise, the Rambo franchise, and look at the first film in the series, Rambo First Blood, we can see the political atmosphere seeping in to this story. The story is about John Rambo, a Vietnam vet who's returning home from the war. He is a Green Beret. He's been awarded. He has done his patriotic duty. But when he returns to this small town looking for his friend, he's immediately met with severe hostility from the local police, from the local sheriff, and is even kicked out of town. When he returns to the town, he's followed, he's shot at, and by the end of the film, the police are ready to actually kill him. So why? Why treat a war veteran in this manner? It speaks to the time period. If we look at the end of the Vietnam War, we look at the public perception of that war in the 70s, what we're going to see is what we call a credibility gap, where the public, over the long years of this war, have lost their faith and lost their trust in their government. They don't necessarily believe what they say to them, right? You had generals speaking about how well the war was doing, and then you have something like the Tet Offensive, where the Viet Cong are able to surprise attack the United States. You have the United States president obviously orchestrating this war, and then you have the publication of the Pentagon Papers showing that he really wasn't all in favor of this. And so in this first televised war period, you have people losing their interests, losing their faith, and losing their patience with the war. And that hostility that Rambo is met with is a representation of the people and the government really just wanting to leave the war in the past, not wanting to deal with it anymore, not wanting to pay it any time. And so instead of Rambo coming home to a parade, he's met with spit at the airport. Now, if we move on through Stallone to his next franchise, which would be Rocky, the great Philadelphia boxer, we can also use some of the villains in that movie to give us an eye into history. If we take the 4th installment, Rocky IV, aptly titled, we have Rocky going up against the Soviet champ who has recently caused the death of Rocky's longtime friend, Apollo Creed. So Rocky travels all the way to the Soviet Union. He stays in a little cabin. He works out in the snow. He does all this just to fight this Soviet champion. And at the end, of course, even though the Soviet guy is 8 feet taller and 100 times stronger, Rocky is able to defeat him. The question is why? Why Rocky IV? Why the Soviets? What was the point of those 2 athletes coming up against each other? And the point is the Olympics, right? The Moscow Games were boycotted by the United States. And then 4 years later, the Los Angeles Games were boycotted by the Soviets. So you have these 2 Cold War foes not having a chance to come up against each other, at least in the athletic field. And so what Rocky IV does is fictionalizes but puts those 2 against each other. right? Rocky the American versus the Soviet champ. And to have Rocky win in the movie is almost like having him win at the Olympics, since there was no shot. So this might seem a little odd, but Stallone and other action movies really do take the countries that the United States has had issue with, or countries where we are just so different, and puts them up as sort of the enemy that the United States can prevail over. So I hope you enjoyed watching, and I hope the next time you see a film, you start thinking, why this person, or why this character? Why is he from there? And see what you can connect back to your history studies.